Good morning, Senators.
Good morning.
My name is Marcus Robinson. I'm with the Opportunity Trust, which is an education nonprofit in St. Louis, working to try to organize for better schools across our region. I am a native Missourian. I started my teaching at Jennings Junior High, taught public school, private school, and in 2004, I launched a charter school with 160 kids in Indianapolis, Indiana. That was an absolute failure. About 30% of our kids were proficient on ELA and mathematics. Because we had the flexibility, though, to make the right changes for the kids that we were serving, more than 3/4 of those kids live in poverty in one of the worst neighborhoods in Marion County, Indiana. We were able to turn that around, and by 2008, we had surpassed the state average on the state test, going above 80% proficiency with our kids. By 2010, we won the Federal Blue Ribbon Schools Award for closing the achievement gap. Our SAT scores for our juniors and seniors consistently surpassed the national average, with a 99% black population and 100% college admission at four-year colleges and universities at places like Notre Dame, Wellesley Smith, Northwestern, Carnegie Mellon. A charter school started in a former grocery store in one of the worst school districts in the United States of America. I come today to support this Senate bill because there are kids in my native community where I live who don't have access. If you live in Riverview Gardens, if you live in a place like Ferguson, Florissant, you don't have access to charter schools even when they're working well. And so I want to see those kids have the option that my students had. By 2016, we had grown from 160 kids to 2,000 kids across 6 charter schools and 1 district turnaround. We partnered with the state to actually turn around an inner city public school with a traditional district. I'm also concerned and support this bill because it provides accountability. The charter school that I led was great, and I'm proud of that work, but not all charter schools are great. And this bill provides accountability for us to close charter schools that are underperforming and not meeting the need and not meeting the promise for the parents who've chosen those schools. It goes a step further because it not only holds that school accountable, but it holds the sponsor of that school accountable. That they need to come before the state board and to testify as to why a school existed under their stewardship for so long without the kind of intervention that would have prevented a statewide closure. This is the kind of legislation that we need to make Missouri better. Every kid deserves access to an awesome school. No kid deserves access to an awful school. And this bill, I believe, remedies that in a lot of ways. I'm proud to be a Missourian, and I'm proud of this bill.
Okay. Any questions as witness? Senator Arthur.
Thanks for your testimony, and I'm glad you mentioned Smith College. Great college.
Phenomenal.
And congratulations on the turnaround success. Can you, this is probably part of a broader conversation, but what changes did you make in that school to set the school and your students on a path to success? And what barriers in the tradition, or what barriers did you perceive existed in the traditional system that prevented those kinds of changes?
Absolutely. And so we were able to run a longer school day for our kids. We were able to extend the school week and work on some Saturdays. We were able to open our building 12 months to be able to do summer remediation for kids who were struggling with the state test. We were able to go independently as an individual school to the State Board of Education and say we need to add SAT prep as part of the high school curriculum so that our kids in public schools have the same advantage that I saw every day our kids having in private schools. To the kind of preparation that gets them ready for college entrance exams. We were able to change how teachers work to do professional development. We had really young teachers in our building, most of whom were in the first 5 years of their teaching, and we needed to create the infrastructure to be able to make them look like more seasoned teachers, and we were able to do that. And so I would say that the difference is as a school principal, I didn't have 3 levels of bureaucracy above my head to make those changes. I had a small nonprofit governing board that I could interact with on a monthly basis, and when it was the right thing to do, we made that change on the spot for those kids. Additionally, we were free to partner with other community organizations to provide wraparound supports, housing, clothing, food vulnerability for the kids that we were serving.
Thank you. And I think that gets to my point more, gets to my thought process more generally, in that I think a lot of traditional schools want to do those things and want to provide those services. And I'm always thinking, as a legislature, what can we do to enable that kind of, or incentivize that kind of thinking?
Well, I think this bill does that, because the more that we have high-performing schools that are making the difference, the more we create a mindset shift for those public school educators who are in those communities.
But
Sometimes we just need to see what more positive reality could be to make that shift.
I just wonder if we set up competing entities in doing it, though, and to the detriment of both when we dilute those resources.
That's very difficult to say. I would say that if my parents in Indianapolis hadn't had access to my school, then those kids would have been on a vastly different trajectory out of those neighborhoods. And again, we had the most police runs of any community in Indianapolis on our block. And so what I can tell you is 15 years after we launched that school, there's new housing in that community, there are new schools in that community, and the district now is the leading sponsor of innovation in that community because we had done that work. Two superintendents prior, they had no interest in innovating, no interest in doing anything different. And so what we brought to the table is an example of what greatness can look like for some of the most struggling kids in the community. I think that gave the school district the political will.
We're going to have to
they
move
needed
on.
Thank you.